चलिए अस्सलाम वालेकुम आसिफ ताहिर क्या हाल है। ये करना है। ठीक है, ये बस हम करें। ये यील्ड ऑफ परसेंटेज यील्ड करना, वी हैव टू डू क्वेश्चंस। तो ये उसकी वर्कशीट है। ठीक है, ये उधर जो कोर्स है ना megalecture.com पे, उस पे ये मैं ऐड भी कर दूंगा। ठीक है, तो परसेंटेज यील्ड। ठीक है, आई जस्ट गिव यू अ स्मॉल बैकग्राउंड, एक सिंपल फॉर्मूला व्हिच इज कि व्हाट इज यील्ड कि, और उसको ना मैं थोड़ा सा यील्ड को ना, लेट मी जस्ट डिस्कस वेरी क्विकली। और एक सेकेंड रुकना, मैं इसको नहीं, चले ठीक है, ये भी यील्ड को एक दफा देख लें। तो यील्ड का बस खाली मैं डिस्कस करें कि व्हाट इज द फॉर्मूला ऑफ यील्ड। वो हमने पहले भी डिस्कस किया हुआ है। दैट्स सिंपली व्हाट इट्स द एक्चुअल ओवर द एक्सपेरिमेंटल। ठीक है, एक्चुअल ओवर एक्सपेरिमेंटल। नहीं, एक्सपेरिमेंटल, सॉरी गलत कह रहा हूँ, थ्योरेटिकल टाइम्स 100 if you're talking about percentage yield. अच्छा, what this means is कि actual is the one that you obtain from an experiment. ठीक है, that's the actual. कि you do an experiment and you find out कि let's say you were trying to produce a certain amount of NaCl. ठीक है, and जो actual mass in the experiment came out to be, let's say it came out to be 80 grams. Theoretical is, so actual is your experimental. It's the one that you get from your experiment. You actually do an experiment. Achha, what is the theoretical one? Theoretical one is the one that you calculated on your paper. So let's say you calculated that it should come out to be 100 grams, right? So you did all your math, you took a copy, took a pencil, and you figured out the output that you're going to get. Okay, for example, the amount of NaCl that you're going to get is 100 grams, right? So now that is all done theoretically. It's just done on a piece of paper. But when you go and actually perform the experiment and you take all the same masses, everything you do exactly the same. But in reality, you're not getting 100 grams, you're getting 80 grams. Normally, you're never going to get 80 grams. You're never going to get 100 grams. Why? Because there's lots of issues. What are the issues? Uh, Substances have a lot of impurities, right? So, for example, you buy sodium, you buy chlorine. It's not going to be 100% pure. There's going to be a lot of impurities. You're not going to get pure samples. So it's going to have a lot of impurities, which is going to decrease the amount of mass that you're going to produce. A lot of mass would be lost while you're doing an experiment. So loss, like if you're trying to bake a pizza, right, you're going to lose a lot of flour, right, during the process. You're going to lose some cheese as well. So the point is, there's in the process while you're doing while you're actually performing the whole thing, there's going to be a loss of substance. It is impossible that you're trying to do an experiment, like if you're trying to bake a pizza and you don't lose the flour in the process. Some of it falls onto the floor. Some of it is going to be lost anyways. So it is going to decrease the output that you're going to get. What else can happen? What else can happen is that a lot of times what happens is that reactants, they never go to completion. Reactants, not all of them react. Could be a number of reasons. So if you're trying to bake a pizza, not all of the reactants you bought from the grocery store, not all of them are going to end up in the pizza, right? Some of them might be lost. They would not be able to become part of the pizza. Some of it would be left in the bowl where you're making all the mixture. So a lot of things are going to happen. So your final output, your experimental mass is always going to be lesser than your, normally it's going to be lesser than what you calculated. So theoretical is the one that you do all the math, you do all the working, you do it on the paper. That's theoretical. Experimental is, or the actual is the mass or the output that you're going to get when you do the actual experiment, and it's going to come out to be less. It always normally comes out to be less. So your yield or percentage yield is what? In this case, it's going to be 80 divided by 100 times 100 to figure out the percentage, and that comes out to be 80%. So what is the meaning of yield? Yield simply means that whatever you thought, whatever calculations that you did, you're not going to get 100% of it while you do the actual experiment. You're going to get 80% of it, right? So that is what yield is. So the rest of the moles question is going to be done exactly the same way. So we're going to try and we'll start doing these questions now. Okay, this is the worksheet. Let me just check. So that's my worksheet. Okay, let's start doing these questions. So, for example, he says that there is 16.8 grams. Remember, you need a calculator for this. So, 16.8 grams of carbon monoxide, right? So, what I can do is, and it reacts completely. So, I know the mass of carbon monoxide, and it reacts completely to give you iron. So, so he's given us the mass of iron. So, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to first figure out the theoretical yield, not the yield, theoretical. What is the mass of Fe that should come out if everything happens perfectly? So I'm going to find the moles of carbon monoxide. How do I find moles? Moles is mass divided by क्या होता है? It's molar mass. वो करो तो 16.8 और उसको ना you have to divide that by carbon monoxide. Carbon is 12 and oxygen the MR is 16. ठीक है? तो let's एक सेकंड कैलकुलेटर में ढूंढ लूँ जरा एक सेकंड हाँ ठीक है वो कर लेते हैं अच्छा सो आई हैव माय कैलकुलेटर ये खुद भी ट्राई कर लेना डबल चेक दिस ठीक है मे बी आई गेट समथिंग रॉन्ग 16.8 डिवाइड बाय 12 plus 16 कितना होता है that's 28 so that's 0.6 so this is zero point 0.6 moles remember all moles question you find the moles of one thing you'll be able to figure out the moles of everything else so carbon monoxide is zero point 0.6 moles right so if you know the moles of carbon monoxide you can use ratios and you can figure out the moles of Fe as well तो क्या रेशियो है that says 3 ratio 2 the simple way is you can either do the more ratio thing. Maybe this is 3 and this is 2. So zero point 0.6 moles will produce how much? That's going to be X. And you're going to crisscross and do the whole ratio thing. The shorter way is zero point 0.6 divided by its own ratio multiplied by the next ratio, which is Fe. So it's going to be zero point 0.6 uh, multiplied by 2 and divided by 3. So if I take zero point 0.6 and I multiply it by 2 and I divide that by 3, so that comes out to be 0.4 moles. ठीक है and let me इसको highlight कर लेते हैं ये Fe के moles है ठीक है 0.4 moles. So remember ठीक है मैं फिर से बता देता हूँ कि what is the quick way of instead of doing all the crisscross and whole thing the simple way is if you know the moles of one thing 0.6 you want to find the moles of the other substance all you have to do is take those moles divide it by its own ratio and multiply it by the ratio of the other one. So zero point 0.6 divided by 3 times 2. So zero point 0.6 divided by 3 and multiplied by, and it gets multiplied by 2. So that's one very good way of finding moles. इसको एक second इसका ठीक है that's one very good way of finding moles. Uh, like if I want to find the moles of Fe2O3, so zero point 0.6 divided by 3 and multiplied by 1. So you'll find the moles of this thing. So, anyways, कितने moles are I'm getting 0.4 moles. I'm going to find the mass of Fe then. The theoretical mass, remember that. How do I find mass moles multiplied by the AR of Fe? So, Fe कितना होता है? I think 56.4 multiplied by 56. So, what is 0.4 multiplied by 56? That's 22.4 grams. अच्छा अब ये आना चाहिए. This is the theoretical. This is the one that I've calculated, 22.4 grams, right? 22.4, yes. Achha, but what are we getting? We are actually getting what he has said is that we are getting 8.96 grams. So this is the actual. He did the experiment and he found out that you're not getting that. You're getting this one. This is the actual. So I'm just going to use the formula for yield, which is what's the formula for yield? Percentage yield. Okay, that's take the actual 8.96, divide that by theoretical. You should get 22.4 on your paper, on your calculator, but you're actually getting 8.96. And you multiply it by 100. So करते हैं इसको क्या आता है 8.96 divided by 22.4 and multiplied by 100. So that's I'm getting 40%. So the answer to this question is 40%. इसका आंसर 40% आया ठीक है जो अगला वाला होगा उसमें और क्लियर हो जाएगा ठीक है अच्छा again it's a very similar question 8.5 grams ammonia is given so I'm going to find the moles of ammonia ठीक है इसको बल्कि uh, ये वर्किंग अच्छे तरीके से ना करने की आदत डालो ठीक है so I'm going to find the moles of ammonia तो the mass is given that's 8.5 and divided by NH3 क्या होता है भाई N is 14 और H1 होता है so that's 14 plus 317 हो जाता है so that's 8.5 and that's going to be divided by 17 which gives me 0.5 moles so ammonia के जो moles है ना that's coming out to be 0.5 moles अच्छा so I found the moles of ammonia ठीक है तो कॉपर के निकालने so I'm going to do again it's 2:3 तो शॉर्टकट मैंने क्या बताया था रेशियो 0.5 डिवाइड बाय 2 उसको अपने रेशियो से डिवाइडेड बाय इट्स ओन रेशियो मल्टीप्लाइड बाय द रेशियो ऑफ द अदर वन जो कि 3 है सो 0.5 डिवाइड बाय 2 टाइम्स 3 तो 0.5 डिवाइड बाय 2 टाइम्स 3 पहले कर लेते हैं डिवाइड बाय 2 सो व्हाट डू वी गेट 0.5 times 3 and divided by I'm getting 0.75 moles इसका है 0.7 remember this is the theoretical ठीक है this is the one that you're finding through your calculator ठीक है so that's 0.75 moles तो निकाल लेते हैं फिर theoretical mass we're going to try and find out what the theoretical mass is so so the mass of copper would be moles multiplied by the AR of copper which is अच्छा क्या है what's the AR of copper I think that's 63.5 so it's 0.75 multiplied by 63.5 so that gives me 47.625 so I'm not really sure are they taking 63.5 or are they taking 64 if I take 64 I'm going to get exactly 48 so I suspect the AR of copper is taken as 64 I said now this one okay I found the theoretical right this is the one I found using my calculator what he's actually saying is okay, he's getting 26.4 grams this is the actual value and this is the one that I calculated on my calculator so I'm going to find yield how do you find percentage yield that's actual which is 26.4 theoretical this is 47 point times 100 so if I do that so 26.4 divided by 47.625 times 100 so I'm getting 55% ठीक है so I'm getting 55% or something close to 55% I think they took the AR of copper as 64, not as 63.5. So you're going to get exactly, in that case, you're going to get exactly 55%. ठीक है, clear as that's another yield question. Let's try and do another one. बल्कि सारे करते हैं आज ना. अच्छा, let's try and do another one. We've got, so what's happening here? So he says that there is, remember, you find the moles of one thing. Okay, try and figure out. So there's 25 cm cube of lithium hydroxide, and the concentration is also given, right? So if you're given the volume is given, and you're given the concentration as well. You can find moles, right? I'm going to find moles anyways. I don't care what the question is asking. So I'm going to do concentration times volume. So it's 2.48 mole per dm cube. That's the concentration. Times the volume 25, but that should be in dm cube. So I'm going to divide that by 1000. Calculator पे करो ये क्या आ रहा है? That's 2.48 and times 25, and the whole thing gets divided by. So I'm getting 0.00062 moles. But he was asking for the moles of lithium hydroxide, 0.0062. So we found the moles of lithium hydroxide. And he says number of moles of lithium. So lithium hydroxide, coming back to this, he's asking, find the number of moles which could be formed. This is the theoretical he's talking about, which could be formed of lithium sulfate. So this is 0.0062 moles. So the lithium sulfate that's going to be formed, this is 2:1. So lithium sulfate would be, you don't have to use, I mean, 2:1 means this is going to be half of this. So this is going to be 0.0031 moles, right? So that's the lithium sulfate that's formed. Then that lithium sulfate crystallizes. So how many moles of lithium sulfate do you have? You have कितने 0.0031, right? So what are the crystals that are going to be formed? It's also 1:1, so that's going to be 0.0031 moles, right? So 0.0062 moles would produce half the amount, 2:1, 0.0031, and then these 0.0031 lithium sulfate would be crystallized and they'll form the exact 1:1. So they're going to form the same exact amount of moles. So I found the theoretical moles. Now he says the mass of one mole. Remember, mass of one mole is the MR. He's given you the MR of lithium sulfate. Remember this. I don't know why they've started using this, but remember, mass of one mole of something is the MR of that substance. Now he's asking for the maximum yield. Maximum yield is like 100%. This is the term theoretical yield or maximum yield means the same thing. Maximum means what your calculator is giving you. So we're going to find that out. So we're going to try and find out what is the mass of lithium sulfate that's going to be formed. So what I have is I have moles. So I can find mass. Mass is what? Moles multiplied by the MR. The moles are already with me. That's 0.0031. वो पहले ही है. And I'm going to multiply it by the MR of lithium sulfate, which is also given over here. TK, that's 128. That's already provided. कितना है? 128. So let's calculator पे करते हैं. 0.0031. एक सेकेंड, मैंने कुछ गलत तो नहीं किया. 2.48. Let me just start. Do the first 2.48 multiplied by 25 and divided by 1,000. As I made one mistake over here. This is not 0.0062. It's actually just 0.062. ये correct कर लो. So this is in the middle. That's also, so I have to correct all of these. This is 0.062, and this will be 0.031. And then this 0.031 will produce point 0. So it's not 0.0031, it's just, so need to correct this as well. अच्छा, और यहाँ पे I'm going to correct, it's 0.03 when I added one extra zero. So now I'm going to multiply it by 128. I'm getting 3.968 grams. So that's my theoretical output. That's what my calculator gives me. And I have to find the percentage yield. So what is the formula? It's actual. They've given me the actual. They've told me that the crystals that are forming are 2.2 grams. So that's the actual. And I'm going to divide that by the theoretical, which I should be getting. I should be getting 3.968. That's the theoretical or the maximum yield times 100. So let's try and do that on my calculator. It's going to be 2.2 divided by 3.968 times 100. So that gives me 55 point to three significant figures, 55.4%. So that's this question. The next question is also kind of very similar. That what he's doing is that he's adding HCl to cobalt carbonate. So, and he's already told us that the amount of crystals that are forming for cobalt chloride, uh, he's given us the mass. So the volume of HCl is given, and the concentration of HCl is given as well. So in the first part, you have to find the moles, and that's pretty easy. It's just concentration times volume. So it's going to be what, 2.2 times the volume is 50 cm cube. So I'm going to divide that by 1000. So let's see what do we get. So 2.2 times 50, and then I'm going to divide the whole thing by 1000. तो मेरा आ रहा है, I'm getting 0.11 moles. ठीक है, that's what I am getting. So that means the amount of HCl is, go back to the equation, it's 0.11 moles. वो यहाँ पे आ गया. So now he's asking calculate the number of moles of cobalt chloride crystals that will be formed. So it's 2:1. So cobalt chloride would be half this amount. ठीक है? So I'm going to take this amount and divide by 2. So I'm going to get point 0. ये दोबारा double check कर लेना कि वो मसला ना हो. So I'm going to get 0.055 moles, right? So I'm going to get 0.055 moles of cobalt chloride. Or crystals के moles भी exactly same होंगे because it's going to be 1:1, right? Like if it crystallizes and forms a .6 H2O, तो same ratio होगा ना. It's like one cobalt chloride. ठीक है, अगर आपके पास if you have one cobalt chloride और फिर उससे you are forming these crystals, right? So one cobalt chloride would form one crystal, right? So it's going to be exactly the same ratio. So the moles of the crystal will be exactly, they're going to be exactly the same. ठीक है? तो maximum number of moles. So theoretically it's this, right? So what is it? 0.055 moles maximum. और दोबारा mass of 1 mole जो है, that's the MR. The MR is given. So how do you find mass? Mass is moles multiplied by MR. Moles hai, we have 0.055, and I'm going to multiply it by the MR. MR क्या, that's 238. So let's find out what's my, so 0.055 multiplied by 238. Calculator, that gives me 13.09 grams. As I remember, this is the theoretical. This is all my working on my calculator. So theoretically, on paper, on my calculator, I should be getting 13.09 grams. Yeah, Nishi. Okay, what am I getting? He says that I'm getting 6.31 grams of the crystal, not 13.01. So I'm going to find yield, which is the actual. So in reality, in the experiment, we got 6.31. While we should be getting, on my calculator, theoretically, we should be getting 13.09 and times 100. तो अब इसको कैलकुलेटर पे 6.31 and then divided by 13 point what 09. अच्छा, and times 100, right? So कितना है? That's 48 point. That's going to come out to be 48.2%. That's my answer to this particular question. सही है. अच्छा, रिमेंबर फिर से ये आसिफ पूरा जो वीडियो कोर्स पढ़ा ना megalecture.com. I'm going to put all this and the worksheet and the notes, etc. over there. I said, let's try and do the next question. So, what is this question? He says there's 8.88 grams of calcium hydroxide, and he's asking for the moles of calcium hydroxide. So, moles is what? Mass, right? Molar mass. So, that's going to be what? 8.88 divided by calcium hydroxide. What is calcium hydroxide? Calcium is 40, O is 16, and H is 1. So, क्या होगा? That's going to be 40 plus O जो है, that's 16 plus H is 1 and OH is twice, so that's going to be 17. 16 plus 1 times 2, right? I think that's going to be 74. So you निकालो, it's 8.88. Divide that by 74 and that gives me कितना है? That's giving me 0.12 moles. So I'm getting 0.12 moles. This is 0. So calcium hydroxide is 0.12 moles. And he's asking for the moles of chlorine gas as well. So how many moles of chlorine gas is 7200 cm cube? So remember, it's a gas, right? So what is the formula for gas? Moles is volume of gas. और उसको ना you have to divide that by कितना 24 dm cube. So 7200 को ना you have to convert that into dm cube. So dm cube में क्या होगा? That's going to be 7.2 dm cube. And the whole thing gets divided by 24. क्या आता है calculator? 7.2 divided by 20.3 आता है. इसके moles कितने हैं? That's 0.3 moles. फिर वो कह रहे हैं, what is the... Now remember, when you have a question, और yield से थोड़ा छोड़ दो उसे. When you have a question where the moles of two substances are given, so then it's a limiting and excess question because one of the moles is more than the required amount. Like if I zoom in and just focus on this could be niche. As if I just focus on this part, let's zoom in further. Let's get rid of this. So let's just focus on this part. I said now गौर से देखो. What is the ratio? The ratio is that 6 of these react with 6 of, well, 1:1, okay? So that means they should be reacting in equal amount. So that means, look at the moles now. That's not 1:1, okay? This is not 1:1. Because 0.12 will only, remember 0.12 is the smaller quantity. Well, 0.1 is smaller than 0.3. Okay, just to clear the confusion, let me write this as 0.30 moles. Okay, so remember 0.12 is smaller than 0.30. So since the ratio is 1:1, 0.12 moles will react, but they will only react with 0.12 moles because the equation states, wo jo recipe hai na, that states that they're going to react in the same exact ratio, 1:1. So that means ye galat hai. This 0.3 is wrong. It's because the 0.3 cannot react completely. Out of that 0.13, only 0.12 is reacting. The rest you just added in excess, they were not required because the equation states they react in the same ratio. So 0.12 will react with 0.12. So what is what is left? 0.12 is in 0.18 is in excess. So that indicates counter 0.3. 0.18 is in excess. Extra, they are extra, they're not required, right? Only 0.12 was needed, and you, for some reason, added a lot more than 0.12, which were not required, right? So these would be the ones that would be left. So always remember when you have a limiting excess question, you always use the moles you always use the moles for limiting reagents to calculate your ratio. You never use the moles of the excess reactant because they are incorrectly added. So you kind of cross them out. You never use them in your calculation. So now the question states, what is the maximum number of moles of calcium chlorate, which is this thing? It's CaClO3. So we have to find the maximum moles of this, right? So since we figured out that this is the limiting reagent and you have to use the moles of calcium hydroxide, 0.12 will react with 0.12. Now the ratio is 6:1. So how did I tell you? You take 0.12, divide that by 6, and then multiply by 1. Or 6:1 simply means that this is going to be 6 times lesser. 0.12 divided by 6. So 0.12 divided by 6 and times 1. What do we get? So I'm getting 0.02 moles. I'm getting 0.02 moles. And so that's calcium chlorate. So that's the maximum moles of. That's the maximum moles you're going to get. Okay. I say, yeah, I get 0.02, right? And then he's saying, what's the maximum mass of? So you once you have the moles, you can find the mass, right? Uska kya formula? Mass is moles multiplied by the MR. So okay, that's 0.02. Now, calcium chlorate, what's the MR? Calcium is 40. Chlorate ClO3. So ClO3 is Cl is 35.5. Oxygen क्या that's 16 times 3 और फिर वो twice भी है. So that's the MR. Try and figure that out. 16 times 3 is 48. That's just I'm going to add 35. ठीक है हाँ. I'm going to add 35.5. Then I have to multiply. ClO3 is twice, so I multiply by 2, and then I add 40 to it. So I get 207. So it's 0.02. उसको multiplied by 207. What do we get? 207 multiplied by 0.02. I'm getting 4.14 grams. इसको सही करो जरा एक second. अच्छा, I'm getting 4.14. I'm getting 4.14 grams, right? So now remember, this is the theoretical. This is what my calculator is giving me. So that's our theoretical value. So 4.14 grams. Now, the next part is, the next part is the yield question. You have to find the percentage yield. And he says that the experiment is repeated using different amounts. So basically, all the calculations that we did, we can ignore those because now he's doing a different experiment. In that experiment, he says that the maximum mass or the theoretical one that you got from your calculator, that's 4.84. And the actual mass, when you did the experiment, was 3.63. He's asking you to figure out the yield. So that's pretty easy. You do all the working, which is the actual, which is 3.63 that you got from the experiment. And you're going to divide that by, you're going to take that and divide by the theoretical one that your calculator is giving you. That's 4. 84, and then you're going to multiply it by 100. So we have 3.63, 4 point into 100, and that's coming out to be 75%. Okay, so it's coming out to be 75%. So that's the वो इसका आंसर है. चलिए, is this clear? अच्छा, अब अच्छा ठीक है, वो भी मैं नहीं, वो इलेक्ट्रोलिसिस वगैरह का वो सारा वीडियो कोर्स करना ना, मैंने पहले ही I've already uploaded there. ठीक है, तो बस इस पे वेबसाइट पे जाओ ना, अगर if you have difficulty तो वो उसके ऊपर I've uploaded all those lectures over there, plus the notes and the worksheet as well. अच्छा, this one, FES. Now this one, let's try and do this one. ठीक है, calculate percentage yield for this reaction. So he's given me the mass of FeSO4, so I can find moles, right? Moles is what? Mass divided by molar mass. He's given me the MR as well, so it's 15.2. Divide that by the MR, which is कितनी है? That's 152. So what do we get? 15.2. Divide that by 152. So I'm getting 0.1 moles, right? So what is the mass of Fe2O3 that should be formed? Ratio क्या है? That's 2:1, right? Half होना चाहिए ना, मतलब if I do 0.1 divided by 2 times 1, right? So it's going to be half. So इसके moles, that's going to be 0.05 moles. So I'm going to find the theoretical mass. So that's moles multiplied by MR, so that's 0.05, and multiplied by the MR of Fe2O3, which is given over here. Okay, that's already given. That's 160. So क्या आता है? That's 1 second, divided by 2 times 160. That's 8 grams. So remember, this is the maximum or the theoretical mass, the one that my calculator is giving me. And he says, in the question, he says he's getting 4.8 grams. So that's the actual, right? So we'll try and calculate yield now. The actual he's given me is 4.8. He's getting 4.8. While what I've calculated, that's 8 grams. You should get 8 grams on your calculator, but in reality, you're getting 4.8 grams. So 4.8, divide that by 8, and that gives me 60%. So my yield is 60%. So this was the actual. This was my theoretical. ठीक है? अच्छा, चलो, moving on to the next one. Here's another question, and it's about percentage yield. TK, he's asking propene. Propene is the first one. So there's 1.4 grams of propene. So there's 1.4 grams of this. So I can find the moles of propene, right? So moles is mass divided by the MR. So the mass is already given, 1.4. The MR of propene is, remember, carbon is 12 to 36, and there are 6 hydrogens. So that's 42. You check pickle and double check this. 1.4, divide that by, तो कितने moles है? That's what I'm getting is 0.03 moles. So the first option is clear, 0.03 moles. And he's asking calculate the maximum moles that could be formed for this thing. So it's everything is 1:1. So all of them will be 0.03 moles. This will be 0.03 moles. This is not required. This will be also be 0.03 moles. Everything. So theoretically, you should be getting, that's going to be your output, 0.03 moles. He's asking for the maximum mass as well. So I'm just going to convert that into mass. Mass is what moles multiplied by the MR, which is 0.03. The MR is already given as well. They've given me, yeah, they've given me the MR, which is 170, right? So what's 0.03 times 170? That's giving me 5.6 grams. So remember, this is my theoretical value. This is what my calculator gives me. Now at the end, he's asking for the percentage yield, right? So he's given me the actual as well. He says that um, what is the amount of iodopropane that's produced? So this is the actual amount. So what we have is we have the actual, we have the theoretical. So I'm going to calculate yield. So actual, which is he's getting 4.4 grams. Theoretical, my calculator tells me that we should be getting 5.6 grams times 100. Okay, so it's going to be 4 divided by 5.6 and multiply that by 100. I'm getting 71 up till three significant figures, 71.4%. Okay, that's going to be my yield. चलें कितने क्वेश्चंस रह गए हैं अब ये कर लेते हैं नेक्स्ट वन I guess there's still a few questions, but let's try and let's be very quick now. Okay. So now he says that there is nickel carbonate, 12 grams, right? That were added. So I'm just going to be quick. So he's asking, but that's in excess, and it's added to 40 cm cube. Remember, I told you you never use excess moles. So he's asking you to figure out the. I mean, you can figure out the moles of sulfuric acid. He's actually done that already, but I'm just going to do the working again. So how do you find the moles of sulfuric acid? That's concentration times volume. So the concentration is, if you look over here, the volume is given and the concentration is also given. So you can find the moles. What do you get? It's 2 multiplied by 40 divided by 1000, and that should give you 0.08 moles. But he's already done that for us. The first step, he's already done that for us. So this is 0.08 moles. Remember, I'm going to ignore the excess moles because excess is more than the required amount. So that's not the correct amount that he's added. He's added more than what is needed. So there's no point in using this value. I said, so half moles of we should be able to figure out moles of everything. Everything is 1:1, so this is going to be 0.08 moles. The other two will also be everything in this. It's all 1:1. So nickel sulfate that's formed in the first reaction, that nickel sulfate is then crystallized. So 0.08 moles of nickel sulfate were formed in the first reaction, and then those are turned into crystals, hydrated crystals. And that's also 1:1, so that's 0.08 moles as well. This will be 7 times more. It's 1:7, so it's going to be 7 times more, but I don't think we need these moles, so I'm not going to do that calculation. So you can calculate the number of moles of nickel carbonate that react. So that's also going to be 0.08 moles. Everything in this equation is 1:1. So then he's asking, find the mass of nickel carbonate, right? So that reacted, right? So we're going to find mass, moles multiplied by molar mass, to give us the MR. Yeah, nickel carbonate MR is, it's given over here. They've given us the MR. So we're going to use that. So we already have the moles, which is 0.08, and I'm going to multiply it by the MR, which is kitni hai? That's 119, right? What do we get on my calculator? That's 0.08 multiplied by 119. So I'm getting 9.52 grams. So the answer to the second one is 9.52 grams. And then he's asking the mass of unreacted nickel carbonate. So basically, this is the amount that is actually reacting. And this was the amount that was actually added, 12 grams. Remember, he told it was in excess. He already told us it was in excess. So, and I told you it was ज़्यादा डाल दिया उसने. So what is the amount of unreacted? That's just going to be that he added 12 grams, but only 9.52 were reacting. So you take the difference, and what are you going to get? You're going to get 2.48 grams. That is the amount that's in excess, more than what is needed. As anyways, the thing is, the next part I think is about yield. He says that the experiment produces 10.4 grams of hydrated nickel sulfate crystals. Calculate the percentage yield. So, first thing, what is the theoretical mass of the crystals I'm getting? So I'm going to find that. What does my calculator tell me? So moles multiplied by MR. The moles are already with us, 0.08. The MR of the crystal is 21. So क्या आ रहा है? That's 0.08 multiplied by 281. And that gives me 22.48 grams. So theoretically, on my calculator, I should be getting 22.48 grams. So maximum number of moles of nickel sulfate crystals, that's 0.08 moles. The maximum mass of those crystals, I've already calculated, that's 22 point. So I've already done that. So that's 22.48 grams. Now the question states, what does the question state? The question states that what he's getting is 10.4 grams, not 22.48. So we're going to find yield. What is yield? Yield is actual. He's that 4. So that's the actual. Theoretical is the one that I calculated on my calculator. That's 22 point. My calculator says I should be getting 22.48 times 100 and निकालो बैठ के अब इसको क्या आता है 10.4 divided by 22.48 or times 100 46 point. If I round it up to 3 significant figures, I'm going to get 46.3%. ठीक है तो कितने रह गए क्वेश्चन यार इसमें अब मेरे ख्याल से बस आखिरी 3 क्वेश्चन है बस उसके बाद मेरी बात हो जानी है लेकिन सारे कर लेते हैं ताकि वो उसके अंदर वीडियो कोर्स के अंदर भी मैंने ऐड करने तो बस ठीक है आसिफ सारे सारे खत्म करते हैं थोड़ा सा टाइम लगे अच्छा सो ये another question on yield. A sample of magnesium hydroxide is made by adding an excess of aqueous sodium hydroxide to क्या हो रहा है to 1.2 grams of magnesium sulfate. क्या बोल रहा है ये अब खैर वो इतनी लंबी क्लास होगी ना कि अब वो मेरा दिमाग ही काम नहीं कर रहा अच्छा वो कह रहे this is made by adding an excess of NaOH तो उसने डाला है NaOH so we need an equation right he added NaOH to aqueous solution containing MgSO4 so these were mixed and the product of this was that he got अच्छा तो इसका जो product था ना the product of this reaction was that you got MgOH2 एक सेकंड खराब हो गया अच्छा so he got Mg OH twice. Or say yeah, MgOH twice. Now this is a precipitation reaction. If you don't know acid basis salts, this is ionic precipitation that he ended up mixing two aqueous compounds. So they're going to dissociate into their ions. So your solution, मैं explain करूँ, your solution will have Na+1 and OH. NaOH soluble होता है. Group 1 salts are all soluble. ठीक है. Group 1 compounds are all soluble. MgSO4 is also soluble. ठीक है. All sulfates are soluble except for lead, barium, silver, and slightly calcium. ठीक है. Strontium भी. 4, 5 के अलावा all sulfates are soluble. So these ions are dissociated and they are floating around in water. ठीक है. Randomly, they're just swimming around. ठीक है. इधर उधर घूम रहे हैं. Because they're soluble, so they dissociate. This is what happens when a crystal is mixed in water. It just dissociates. The ions get scattered. Achha, inme there are two ions. If they get together, they form a solid precipitate. But if these two ions they get together, what happens to them is they start forming an insoluble crystal. Okay, so what happens is that you start seeing a solid forming at the bottom. That's a precipitate, and that precipitate is of MgOH2. So you get a solid precipitate. That's why it's called precipitation. And Na and SO4 are left in the solution because group 1 compounds are all soluble. So what's left is sodium and sulfate ions. Or NaSO4 it's going to be it's going to be Na2SO4 because Na is +1, SO4 is -2. So next is I need a balanced equation. So 2 Na because on the other side there are two Nas. Or I think best balance there 2 lagana tha, that's it. So I don't know if you needed this equation or not in this question. So now he's saying a sample of magnesium hydroxide is made by. Now um, he gave us in the question. He gave us the mass of. This is the only information that he gave us. He gave us the mass of MgSO4. So I need to find the moles of MgSO4. So moles क्या होंगे? That's mass divided by molar mass. Mass पता है 1.2. Molar mass is Mg is 24 or sulfur 32 plus 16 times 4. So that's 64 plus 32. That's 96, right? So I think that's 120, right? So if I do the math, 1.2 divided by 120, that gives me 0.01 moles. So MgSO4 is 0.01 moles. So MgOH2 is 1:1 with respect to MgSO4. So that should also be coming out to be 0.01. But it should be exactly the same, 0.01 moles. So theoretically, I should be getting 0.01 moles of MgOH2. And I can calculate the mass of this. So that's moles multiplied by the MR. So MgOH2 ki MR kya? That's Mg is 24 and OH is 17 times 2. So that's 34. So what do we get? So I need to multiply that by 24 plus 34. So I'm getting 0.58 grams. So remember, this is my theoretical output. Ye theoretical hai, that's what my calculator is giving me. And let's highlight, okay, that's R. That's theoretical, right? And he's given me the actual, which is 0.26. So I can find yield. How do I find yield? Yield is he actually gave me 0.26. Okay, he's getting 0.26, right? And the theoretical that I found out is 0.58 times 100. So 0.26 divided by 0.58. So I'm getting 44.8%. So we got this. Option C. ठीक है, clear है. So this was a slightly more time consuming question because you had to like make the entire equation. ठीक है, तो थोड़ा सा it was a slightly bit more time consuming. अच्छा, इस पे आ जाते हैं. You've got aqueous. अच्छा, let's do this quickly. Um, volume and concentration is given. Find moles. So 0.55 times 20 divided by 1000. Calculator 0.55 times 20 divided by 1000. I'm going to get 0.011. I'm going to get 0.011 moles. So 0.011 moles. Remember, these are moles of barium nitrate. Okay, he's given me the ionic equation. Okay, what is, and let me explain the question again. He's reacting sodium sulfate with barium nitrate. So the ionic equation is that he has barium nitrate and he's mixing it with sodium sulfate. So the barium ions are coming from, they're coming from barium nitrate, and the sulfate ions are coming from, they're coming from sodium sulfate. And so the moles that I found out was of barium nitrate, 0.011 moles, right? So barium nitrate has one barium, right? So the moles will be exactly the same. Like if I have 10 barium nitrates, it's going to produce 10 bariums, right? So they have exactly the same ratio. And the moles of sodium sulfate and sulfate will be exactly the same. Like one sodium sulfate has one sulfate ion, right? So which is why this is also going to be 0.011 moles. And since everything is 1:1 in the equation, so the moles of barium sulfate will also be, they're also going to be 0.011 moles. Okay? Same ratio, okay? 1:1. So calculate the maximum mass. I'm going to do that of barium sulfate. I have the moles. Moles the mass वाला क्या formula? Mass is moles multiplied by mr, right? So I have the moles, which is 0.011 multiplied by the mr is already given. Get that 233. So let's find this out. So I'm getting 2.56. So remember, this is theoretical. This is what my calculator gives me. 2.563 grams. ठीक है. अब वो yield निकालनी है. Yield is what? Actual. He's given me the actual 1.92. वो कह रहा है कि he's getting 1.92 grams in reality. So what's the yield? Actual over theoretical? I calculated that I should be getting 2.563. But he said that he got 1.92. इधर उसने कहा है ना, ये देखो, it's he's saying it's he's getting 1.92 was obtained. मतलब I calculated it should be 2.563. तो निकालो, it's 1.92 divided by 2.563. गलत हो गया. 2.563. So I'm getting 0.749%. Not 0.74.9%. That's the yield I'm getting. ठीक है, इसका जो आंसर है, that's this. तो I say next one be exactly same है. You can do that. So अगली क्लास में ना we'll do something else. ठीक है, ये yield के सारे हो गए. Remember, इसके जो notes और worksheet वगैरह सब कुछ ना, वो uh, इसके ऊपर वेबसाइट के ऊपर ना वीडियो कोर्स के अंदर ऐड है. ठीक है, तो उधर जाके ना लॉग इन करके देख लेना. ठीक, चले, ठीक है. ओके एवरीवन, टेक केयर. ठीक है, नेक्स्ट क्लास में नेक्स्ट चीज अपलोड कर देंगे. ठीक.